Not familiar with me, but most of you are. I write under the pen name Alden Bauers. I'm a horror author. I've published 4 novellas on Smashwords, the covers of which are over on the table, along with some of my business cards. So, while we're waiting for PowerPoint, I'll give you the official "please buy my books" spiel. That's part, required by law to be one of these events. So there you have it. Go on Amazon, buy my stuff.
Say please.
Please. There's one in every audience.
One way. Opening clarification. Do you want specifics or just chit-chat?
All right.
For those of you who are wondering,
Root for the bad guy.
if you see fuzziness in here, it's not your eyes. We have a little bit of a focus issue with this projector. So you're not having to go get cataract surgery or new glasses next week. Just letting you know.
So here we go. Anti-heroes and anti-villains.
Chris, does this light go out?
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry. You can stand up. You're not blocking anything.
I just have to do that for effect.
Here, you got your marks up here.
Will you see that way? Does it?
Yeah, this is fine.
That's good.
All right. All right. So anti-heroes and anti-villains. Different kinds of protagonists and antagonists for your writing. What is an anti-hero? An anti-hero, really?
Can we postpone that?
It's not allowing me to, you've got to be kidding me. 14 minutes. Well, an anti-hero is a protagonist who lacks traditional heroic attributes, idealism, selflessness, bravery, courage, morality. That's what makes them more interesting. An anti-hero versus a traditional hero. Your traditional hero, they're perfect. Like Superman. They are exceptional individuals. They clearly stand up for an ideal, like Superman stands up for truth, justice, and the American way, and he'll never corrupt those values. He clearly stands against evil. An anti-hero, on the other hand, is usually an ordinary Joe, who's forced into an extraordinary situation. They only care about the end. They really don't care so much about how they get to that end. So that makes it hard for them to take an ideological stance against something. Now, anti-heroes versus flawed heroes. Motivation here is a primary difference. A flawed hero still is going to do what they do for altruistic reasons because they believe it's the right thing to do, although they have personality flaws that may be their undoing. Hamlet, for example, with his indecisiveness. Whereas an anti-hero is going to do the right thing, but for selfish reasons. And we'll get into that a little bit later. An anti-hero will do the right thing the wrong way. They'll use the end to justify the means. Primary example, Dirty Harry. Steps on the guy's leg that's been injured to torture him into figuring out where the person was buried alive. They will defy ethical codes in the same way. And as I mentioned previously, they're not doing the right thing for the right reason. They're looking to get paid. They're looking for revenge. They are looking for just to save their own skin. And sometimes they see themselves as a victim. Like, what did I do to deserve being put in this situation? Feeling of alienation. And there are several types of anti-heroes. The classical is riddled with self-doubt, terrible in a fight. Decisions are based on self-preservation. And usually the story is about that character conquering those many personality flaws. Hamlet is another great example here. The Disney anti-hero is basically good. They're not as optimistic as a true hero. And they tend to be a bit more sarcastic, but they are still pretty much a good guy. You have a pragmatic anti-hero who they're a little bit willing to bend the rules in the name of getting things done. They're willing to kill someone to achieve their main goal, but only people who've got it coming to them. And, like I said, breaks the rules. The unscrupulous anti-hero takes it a bit further. Their morality is just shades of gray, and they don't see anything in black and white. They're usually out for revenge. They do whatever it takes to get the job done. Think Kill Bill. And then you have the hero in name only. They fight on the side of good. Well, that might not necessarily be the case. And their motivations are only slightly less bad than the villains. They can be violent sociopaths. You still root for them. Or they could be a protagonist who is engaged in something illegal. For example, Ocean's 11, the people pulling off the heist are the protagonist, but if you told it from the villain's point of view, George Clooney and his crew would be the villains. Anti-heroes in literature, you have Holden Caulfield in Catcher in the Rye is a fine example, as with Alexander DeLarge, Clockwork Orange, Satan in Paradise Lost, Hamlet in Shakespeare, Becky Sharp in Vanity Fair. And the anti-villain is the logical converse of the anti-hero. They may have heroic goals, personality traits, virtues, but their ends are ultimately evil. They can have honorable intentions and may have a code of ethics, or it may just be that they're in conflict with your protagonist. For example, the police officer trying to stop the people carrying out a robbery. This is the type of anti-villain that I've written about in my upcoming short story collection, Nightmare Highway. I have a short story, Chris has read it, called The Creek. And Gail's read it too. It's about polygamist Mormon fundamentalists who become overrun with vampires. And
As always happens.
one of the girls who has been horribly abused becomes the new head vampire. So she's still technically the villain, but you're kind of rooting for her anyway. You want to see her get the people who have been even worse to begin with. You have a noble anti-villain. They know they're the bad guy, but they have a moral code and they stick to it. They're going to take innocent lives into consideration. They're not going to hurt children. They have a line that they will not cross, no matter, even if it costs them their primary objective. Then you have the pity anti-villain, who's forced into being a bad guy for tragic reasons. And they usually don't want to be the bad guy, but don't see any other option. That would be Sweeney Todd, would be a perfect example. He had his wife, child, taken from him, and then is looking to get the person responsible. And he kills a lot of innocent people along the way, but hey. Then you have a well-intentioned anti-villain. They're trying to do the right thing, but they're doing it the wrong way, and they're making things worse in the process. Magneto is a primary example. He wants mutants to not be vilified, not be hunted down, but the way he goes about it, he ends up creating a lot more problems, as well as a number of great X-Men movies. Then you have the villain, of course, in name only. They are not really evil at all. They're just a foil for your protagonist. Usually they're acting like doing what any reasonable, rational person would do in the situation. I'll go over some examples in a moment. Some examples, you have Dean Wormer in Animal House. If you've ever seen the movie Animal House, you know that Dean Wormer is doing what any college administrator would do in that situation, yet from the perspective of John Belushi and the other cast of characters, he is very much the bad guy. Magneto and X-Men and Sweeney Todd, as I've mentioned previously. But at least with the latter, Mrs. Lovett's pies got better. Secrets in the sauce. So how to create a great anti-hero or anti-villain? You gotta flesh out their backstory. Sometimes they need a cross to bear, usually. A tragic past. Some reason that they are the way they are. I'm sure you've read Chris has read my novella, Once in a Blood Moon, and the male protagonist, Mark Walker, loses his wife in a tragic automobile accident before the events of the novel, and he's a depressed alcoholic who gets sucked into the situation. Give them a personality flaw. Maybe they cheat, they're dishonest, they're willing to hurt people. Maybe they drink, smoke. They should have some less than admirable qualities. Give them a filthy mouth. But give them a line they won't cross. They won't hurt children, they won't hurt innocent people. And give them a chance to redeem themselves at the end. Allow them to overcome their flaws. That is, if you're going for a happy ending, if you're going for a story where the villain wins, which I have also done in the past, maybe that personality flaw becomes their downfall and the reason the villain ultimately triumphs. Now, why do we love anti-heroes so much? I'll open it up to comments in a moment. Traditional heroes are boring. They're too perfect. Yeah, Superman, you can't say a bad thing about him other than he's hamstrung by kryptonite. It's also predictable, and you can't relate to them. An anti-hero you can relate to because they are usually everyday Joes, and they can keep you guessing. They have the guts to say what we would like to do. How many of us are in a job where we've always wanted to tell the boss just what we really think of them? Let your anti-hero character do that. Let him run that slowpoke driver out of the left lane. Let him say something bad to the person in front of him in the line that's taking forever. Now give them depth. So given what I've said, what do all of you think of anti-hero characters, and what makes them preferable maybe to a traditional hero protagonist?
I think the fact they have more backstory, they just about have to. And your traditional hero doesn't have much of a backstory. I mean, it's even hard to write it down. Backstory, born, loving family, grew up,
Yep.
did well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Superman, his planet exploded,
Yeah.
and
But he doesn't remember it. He had a happy childhood.
whereas Batman got to see his parents get murdered.
Mhm.
Yeah. So right away, the interest.
Yeah, the interest is up. And notice Batman is willing to bend the rules a lot more to get the job done. That makes it a little bit more rewarding. And anti-villains can be the same way. They'll keep you guessing. They need a backstory too, and that can add a whole level of depth to your work.
Look at Snape in the Harry Potter books.
Yes, he is a true anti-hero
Mhm.
and a double agent.
And we don't even know until book 37,
Yeah.
whichever one it was, that all this time he's had this hidden agenda. But he's not been a nice person about it either.
No, definitely not. Catcher in the Rye, he's another classic anti-hero. He has alienation, or at least he sees himself as a victim, although I'll admit when I read the book for the second time, I really wanted to punch him in the face and tell him to grow up.
He's pretty whiny.
Yes, very whiny, like a toddler.
Yep.
All right.
Go back and tell me which one of you would say that Hamlet is a one.
I would say that he is somewhere between anti-hero and flawed hero. He has the... I have to back up through some of these slides,
Oh, not.
which I'm happy to do. More of a classical anti-hero. He's riddled with self-doubt. He's not great in a fight, albeit his decisions are based on avenging his father so much as self-preservation. And he doesn't have it's not about conquering his fears, obviously. He doesn't succeed in doing that, and his flaws are really his downfall.
what would you say are some of his flaws?
Well, he's very indecisive, for one thing.
That's not quite true. He wants to kill Claudius,
He does.
but he doesn't want to just simply kill him physically. He wants him to go to hell the same way that his father went to hell, kicking his heels at heaven, basically. Which is why when he stands there, he catches Claudius praying and doesn't realize that Claudius can't pray. And he's about to stab him, and then says, oh, wait a minute, if he's praying, I can't send him now, he'll go to heaven, or my father rots in hell. And so he doesn't. So he's very malevolent in that respect, but he's got...
He wants to torment him, doesn't he?
What?
He wants to torment Claudius. He wants to cause him pain.
And eternal pain.
Mhm.
Eternal
Which is not
damnation is what he's trying to
Usual,
do.
you know, characteristic of a nice person, yeah.
Yes. But you sympathize, I agree with that. You sympathize with him because he's revenging his father.
But he's not a white-hatted good guy by any stretch of the imagination. And he fits across several of those categories, as a lot of anti-hero characters do. And let's face it, Alexander the Large in Clockwork Orange would probably be a villain if you were looking at it from a police officer's point of view.
Well, even at the end, you don't like him.
Okay, things get
There
removed
he
of
goes.
me.
Even at the end, you don't like him. You realize that he is a...
He's a terrible person.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, but he has just now manipulated the circumstances again.
It seems like a lot of the legal dramas and the military action dramas that are on TV right now start out with somebody good doing something bad to do something to fix a situation that went wrong, and then they almost become the person that they're trying to track down and become the prime suspect in the crime until they find out the motive, the underlying reason for what happened was not this person was a murderer or murdered her husband, but she was trying to do something else. So many of our television dramas...
She was trying to get person A, but instead accidentally shot person B or something
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
almost like, it seems to be a very common situation in television drama right now. So, I don't know, it's, those characters cross a lot of different lines.
And a lot of mafia movies.
And they do it quickly.
Goodfellas, the Godfather trilogy,
Yeah, they do it
those
quickly.
are all anti-hero characters.
Yeah.
And again, they would be villains if we were looking at it from the perspective of law enforcement.
Yes.
They do terrible things.
What's the name of the character, the young son who goes into the mafia?
Michael Corleone.
Yeah, it becomes
He's
his story,
good.
yeah.
He's got the white hat, everything else, he
Yeah.
hates the family, etc.
But he gets dragged into it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Well, he does it simply to get vengeance for the death of his father, which is a good thing. But boy, once he takes that other step, he's
Yeah.
literally gun-ho
Yep.
for everything.
Whereas Goodfellas, Henry looks at the gangsters and thinks that, wow, these guys rock, I want to be part of that. Realizes at the end of the book that these guys would kill me in a second if it suited them.
Whereas westerns, traditional westerns are much
Yes.
simpler than that. Much more
Yes.
black out.
John Wayne is your typical
But then you
white-hatted
have
hero.
Magnificent Seven,
And
which,
those are nice guys,
not at
but
all.
they're doing a good thing.
They're doing a good thing.
Clint Eastwood and all those spaghetti
Yeah.
westerns,
Yeah,
so he's
yeah.
a classic anti-hero.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
or Shane, for example.
Shame, yeah.
Oh, Cassidy is perfect.
Yeah.
Do not
Roy
say
Rogers
anything
is
bad about
perfect,
him.
yeah.
No.
Roy Rogers, same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
The Lone Ranger
Mhm.
in the original.
And then they started getting,
Yeah.
Paladin,
Anti-heroes
Yeah,
really
Paladin,
started
yeah.
making their
we're
comeback
right.
in literature and in TV more as the 60s
But you can think back to
continued.
the 40s Casablanca. because
Oh,
neither Rick nor Louis were good guys.
No, they weren't.
But compared to Strasser, oh, yeah, they,
Oh.
yeah.
They were good.
Didn't
Got
want,
that
yeah,
wonderful range.
A lot of
Yeah.
anti-heroes are the lesser of two evils.
yeah. And they end up doing the right thing.
Albeit sometimes for the wrong reason, sometimes for the right reason.
Round up the usual suspects. I
Well,
mean, yeah,
just
yeah.
a mercenary reasons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when I watched that in college, and when Louis finally, even though we knew what was coming, round up the usual suspect, everybody cheers.
Yes.
So at the end of the movie, yes, you were afraid he wouldn't come through this time. So
Now, while this is booting up, I will say if you are planning to do an anti-hero and an anti-villain character in the same story, novel, whatever work you're working on, try and give your reader a reason to root for the anti-villain and maybe not like the anti-hero so much
To begin with, or
throughout the story, or make one amplify those characteristics as the story progresses.
Can you think of a story we would recognize as readers or writers that would be an example of that?
Not off the top of my head, other than my own work, where I have used those two types of characters. Anti-villains are comparatively rare in literature, which is unfortunate because I think they can be very dynamic characters and very interesting.
So
Kylo
it's-
Ren, maybe?
Huh?
Because Kylo Ren is supposed to be the bad guy.
Mhm.
You're supposed to, what was that girl's name? Daisy Ridley? The,
yeah,
um,
Daisy, this ain't Daisy, we all
Daisy
remember this.
Ridley. She's supposed to be the hero, but then you find yourself feeling sympathetic for Kylo Ren. And by the end of the second movie, you're not really sure, is he good, is he bad? Like, what's going on with him?
He's almost like a snake character, but
Mhm.
you suspect this hidden agenda
Yes.
that we just don't know about yet.
Right.
Sure, he stabbed his dad, but hey.
Yeah.
Hey.
Eventually this thing will boot back up. Get the last couple slides out.
So do you use these types of characters in most or all of your fiction?
Almost all of my fiction. The closest I ever came to a true white-hatted hero in any of my work was Mile 43, in which the state trooper character, he's a good, by-the-books kind of cop. Doesn't take any shortcuts. For example, he finds the villains holed up in an abandoned farmhouse. He wants to go and search. He goes, wait a second, I don't know if this is abandoned or not. Do I need a warrant to go in here? I better check with the Registrar of Deeds and make sure that this is legitimately abandoned first. And so there is a scene where he does go to the Registrar of Deeds office and discovers the property is abandoned and then goes and searches it. Whereas Dirty Harry would have just kicked the door and searched the place. But that also comes back to bite him later on in the film. That's another key element to anti-heroes, is sometimes what they do needs to come back to haunt them. Not just as not their complete undoing, but sometimes it can prove a setback for them.
I'm thinking of a type of drama that is usually written and then produced for the screen, for television. For example, the old cowboy westerns like Gunsmoke.
Mm-hmm.
They had clear, strong characters that pretty much all the way throughout the whole drama.
well, except you have a saloon woman
Yeah,
who makes her money, one, getting people drunk, and second, acting as a madam, I think.
Mhm.
You know, that I don't think that's really expressed so much, but those other girls are not working for free.
No better than she should be, as they
No.
used to say.
But they had the bad guys were the kind of guys who'd ride into town and the dog would get up and cross the street,
Yeah.
you know, to get away from them. So you knew right away, this is the bad guy. So,
Yep. And that gets boring after a while.
yeah, it's one kind of a formula.
Like that's why anti-hero characters have become much more in vogue, especially since the 1960s, when people started challenging all those conventional notions.
So, but this idea of the end justifies the means. if, no matter how bad your anti-villain is, or excuse me, how bad your anti-hero is, as long as what you're saying is that.
As long as the
it works
antagonist
out.
is worse than the protagonist.
Uh-huh.
And it can be very, really close.
It can be an almost photo finish.
Mhm.
It would almost depend on which side you're standing on.
Yes,
You want
sometimes it really is just a matter of whose point of view the story is being told from.
Can we use this one?
Yeah, is that one finally booted up?
There is a play called Rosencrantz and
Guildenstern.
Yes.
and they're good friends to Hamlet.
But Hamlet sends them to their death.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because he knows they're trying to do the same to him.
Well, not quite. Because Hamlet is a shit at that point, because he gets the letter, he opens up the letter and finds out that Claudius has sent it. They don't know why they're going to the king of Denmark. Well, not the king of Denmark, king of England, where was they going?
Well, it was England, but
Yeah.
All right. They don't know that that's what's going to happen. But the thing is, they have been compromised, going and telling Claudius everything that's been going on with Hamlet and so forth. So it's all right if you kill everybody in town, shoot the dog.
Yep.
No, kill everybody, but don't shoot the dog.
That would be in line, they don't
Yeah,
cross.
don't shoot the dog.
That's the
Yeah.
definite bad guy.
Yeah.
Evil villain.
Yeah.
And if at the very end you buy an ice cream, after the slaughter has gone on, you've killed the parents of this little kid, who they've been, because they deserve the course bankruptcy or whatever have you. If he then turns around and buys an ice cream cone and gives it to the kid, he is now an anti-hero.
technically, yes. All right, now we seem to be back on track.
Because he engenders some sort of feeling in us that, oh, well, he's not so bad after all, I guess.
Well, wasn't the traditional idea of the hero, yes, I know the guy, so what had to be. But the hero, as in folk tales, we relate to the hero, period. He's the young kid who, the third one.
The plucky young man.
Yes, whose brothers and brothers, two older brothers cannot do it, cannot make out it, or do whatever it's supposed to be accomplished, but it's now left up to him.
Mhm.
He goes on the quest, but that's a hero, and you're just implying that if you can make him as bad a hero as possible, Batman being an example, where he goes out and kills people in the process, as long as he's doing it and buys the ice cream cone for the kid at the end, then we're all happy with him.
Yes, and then he technically fits the definition of an anti-hero. Not all anti-heroes are that bad. And a lot of them do still have a line that they won't cross.
I'm just thinking, my son said the greatest movie ever made, Smokey and the Bandit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, looking at the Bandit
Yeah,
is the anti-hero for sure.
yes, he is technically doing something illegal.
And yet Jackie Gleason as the sheriff going after him should be the good guy.
Yes,
And yet, yeah, it's just one antic after another.
Yep.
So,
it's a comedic take on it. The movie
Yeah.
Vanishing Point is a very similar idea. The premise of the movie is a guy is trying to drive a car from Denver, Colorado to San Francisco in some insane amount of time for no apparent reason. Of course, the police try to pull him over for speeding and he runs them off the road. Checks to make sure they're okay, but keeps right on going. And of course, being that it was shot in 1970, the police are clearly the bad guy and he's the good guy, he's the hero. He's the one standing up to the authority figures. And of course, it's revealed over the course of the movie that he tried to do the right thing in life and got screwed over and ended up in that position of being a car delivery driver. And it's sort of a more serious take on Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah. I'm also thinking another comedic one is Home Alone,
Yes.
because the kid does all kind of outrageous things, but it's to the bad
Yes,
guys.
and he probably would have gotten arrested in real
Yeah.
life had he done that.
Or seriously injured them.
Or destroyed the house.
Yeah.
Even back in the pulp days too, you had degrees of hero.
Mhm.
Tom Savage was just perfection and smart and did everything for the right reason,
Mhm.
but he would collect criminals and operate on their brains to turn them into good guys, probably without even asking them. But then you had somebody like the Shadow with his 245s and his slouch hat, and he would go and shoot people because they're bad and he's not.
Or you had movies, James Cagney, he was the protagonist of the movie, but he's killing people, he's shoving grapefruit in women's faces, and
Mhm.
But the entire film noir category are anti-heroes.
yes, very much so.
Seriously flawed heroes.
And even police officers, detectives can be anti-heroes.
I'm your timekeeper, you have about 20 minutes.
Yeah,
You good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Another great example of an anti-hero, in terms of alienation, have any of you seen the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas? Very interesting film. About a guy whose car breaks down in the middle of a Los Angeles traffic jam. He's been laid off from his job. He has a restraining order against him by his ex-wife, and he sets out to walk across the city to get to his daughter's birthday party anyway, and has various encounters along the way. He goes into a Korean grocery store to try and get change for a phone call. The Korean grocer refuses to unless he buys something, and Michael Douglas smashes up the store. Goes into a fast food restaurant, wants breakfast. They stop serving breakfast. He pulls a gun on the manager. And it's antics like this. You're laughing at him, but you know what he's doing is wrong.
But you can understand where he's
You can understand where he's coming from because we've all been there.
Uh-huh. All that kind of frustration.
That's another difference between the white-hatted heroes. We haven't been there with those characters, whereas we have with a lot of anti-hero characters.
Look at Chicago, the movie and the play.
Mhm.
There are no nice people in there.
No.
They're all murderers but
Con artists.
it doesn't matter. You
Yeah.
relate to them, you understand.
It's this window into that world.
Yeah, she shot this guy, but he deserved it.
He ran into my house. I love that line.
Right, bringing my arm out and he ran into it, yeah. Mhm. All right.
Well, I hate to say it, but I think I've already used up most of my slides.
Hey, do you want to wrap?
I can wrap, I can take more questions, or
Okay.
if anybody has any questions.
Well, Q&A is a
Yeah.
favorite time. We've been doing a lot of Q&A so far, but what made you want to really bring our attention to anti-heroes and anti-villains? What is your motivator?
Well, I want to see more people write about anti-villains, for one thing. I feel there's not really a lot of them in classic literature. I was struggling to find examples, and I think they can be really cool characters. It can really make you question yourself at time as to who you're rooting for. Good example of an anti-villain may be Hank in Breaking Bad. You see, Walt has become this evil person as the show progresses, and Hank, he's trying to stop Walt, but he's doing it for the right reason.
Who is your favorite writer for anti-heroes or anti-villains?
Hmm.
Who do you look to for inspiration or ideas?
Well, being a horror writer, Stephen King, obviously. I look to him to, for ideas and also to make sure he hasn't done it first, because, I don't want to get sued. But a lot of his characters are ordinary people who are thrust into extraordinary situations. And how many times have you ever wondered, what would I do if I were standing in this person's shoes?
Do you ever use people in the news or in news stories or whatever tragic circumstances for ideas to write these characters? Because there's some really rough people out there who end up in the news on a fairly frequent basis.
There are. I don't tend to typically use real-world events, other than I'll incorporate them into the background just to set the time of the story. For example, I'm working on one that's set in 2008, so everyone's talking about the Great Recession, how it affects their lives.
You write mostly short fiction. How much research do you do for your stories, typically?
It depends on the story. Mile 43 required a lot of research because I needed to know a lot about police procedure. Included researching everything from 10 codes to whether or not you need a warrant to search an abandoned building to pretty much anything of that nature, right? Other than writing tickets and arresting people, I didn't know too much about their daily jobs.
You just got back last week in real life from a trip to Long Island,
Upstate New York.
upstate New York, which is not Long Island, believe me.
No.
To empty out the effects of an in-law's house who was moving out of the home.
Well, they're not moving out of the home, they just want it cleaned out. But
And so you said there were maybe a hoarder.
Mhm.
I think those are your words.
Yes.
So am I telling too much? Shut me up.
Not yet.
How many times did you run off the edge of the road thinking about riding while you were driving?
Not a whole lot, thankfully, because, I was driving through Virginia most of the way, and Virginia with its speeding laws, you gotta keep one eye on the road, one eye on the speedometer. It doesn't leave a whole lot of brain capacity for brainstorming and writing. But I was certainly brainstorming while I was in the passenger seat.
You were thinking about riding.
Yes. Yes.
Can you go back to what you said about when you have a story that has an anti-hero and an anti-villain?
Mm-hmm.
And you said try and weight it towards the anti-villain.
A little bit.
What does that accomplish in terms of storytelling?
I think it kind of sets it apart from other stories.
I was thinking of, has anyone seen the TV show Hannibal? Based on the Silence of the Lambs. It's a prequel,
Mm-hmm.
where it's before Hannibal Lecter was imprisoned in the character the movie's speaking
Mhm.
about. And he's a cannibal, which is obviously bad.
Yes.
He's also this refined, intelligent, sophisticated person. And Will Graham is the FBI agent who's after him. He's not after him for really the best reasons. It's become personal to him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of warped and skewed how he goes about the job. So, one of them is the anti-hero, one of them is the anti-villain. I'm not really sure.
But it kind of keeps
As
you
a
guessing, though, as to which
But-
one it is.
But throughout the series, it's like they're kind of evenly matched,
Yeah.
and there's this pull back and forth. Like one isn't weighted more heavily than the other.
Yeah.
And it's that tension, I think, that kind of keeps it propelling forward.
Mm-hmm.
So if you weigh it too heavily on one side or the other, doesn't that kind of drag you down from like a narrative?
It can. And one story I am working on, it's clear who the villain and the hero are, but my anti-hero, he has a very bitter, abrasive personality. He's kind of a jerk. If you've read, Gail and Chris have read The Creek, and there are a couple of times you probably want to punch Frank in the face, right? Whereas Martha, she's doing some very evil things, but you kind of get where she's coming from.
But I get your
Sometimes
point,
it's
and you wanna
seesaws.
Make sure that back and forth, I think, is the way, instead of waiting one way or
Keeping
the
your
other,
reader guessing is
to jump back and forth.
Right.
what you want to do.
So that in one chapter, he really is the hero because he's doing something. But in the next chapter, he's the bad guy because he shouldn't be doing something.
And how your opinion change about these people as you go along. I like that idea, yeah.
The more you keep the reader guessing, the more they're going to want to turn the pages and see it through to the end.
There's a play called Major Bardo. You and I talked about it. A play called Major Bardo. She works for the Salvation Army. She is in Loveland and she has a boyfriend who is one of the other Salvation Army people, probably lieutenants or something. The girl's, Barbara's father, is an arms merchant. What automatically you don't like because he sells it and he sells them to both sides.
Yes.
So he makes money whichever way. And in it, now I want to go back and read the thing to figure out how he did it. But you start off approving of Barbara, but hating her father. And he has no redeeming factors because he's willing to let people die. He never changes that point. But the audience ends up coming over here, and instead of being in favor of Barbara, comes over and you're now in favor of the arms merchant. He hasn't changed the characters at all, but suddenly the audience has shifted its position. I mean, it's a fascinating thing to watch. Can you have something in that case that you don't like how the bad person becomes the good person? Give an example where the bad person is the one you're opposed to him from the very beginning, but at the end you like him better, or you have empathy for him.
Breaking Bad would probably be one of the best examples. Because Walt, you're feeling bad for him at first. He's got terminal cancer. He's trying to provide for his family, but by the end of the series, you realize what his true motivations are. And you really do kind of want Hank to put a stop to it. Of course, I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't watched the show, but let's just say things don't quite work out the way we'd like them to.
Apparently, there's a huge, massive uprising of people who want to be in the thrones.
Never got into that one, so
You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I left my 10-foot pole at home, so.
Well, Alex, we really appreciate you coming out. I know you could be anywhere tonight, but here standing in front of a crowd of writers who are picking your brain, but we appreciate you coming.
I appreciate being here.
We're planning a couple more writers events this summer. We know we're competing heavily with a lot of things going on, like writers camps and contests and retreats all summer. So our event will probably be toward the middle or end of the summer. So we try not to over-program. But we're also planning a lot more events around NaNoWriMo this year to start a lot earlier and do things leading up to NaNoWriMo that are going to be a series of workshops that are hands-on for those people who really are just starting or just really have taken a break and then wanted to get started again. So kickstarting people who are on pause as far as writers. We're going to be doing a series of things starting in late August going through early October. There may be as many as 5 different programs all about starting fledgling writers on the path of success. So you all be paying attention to that. We'll be bringing some college folks in and some folks who are not on faculties to do some of this work, so we think it'll become professional type stuff. Not that any of us are not professionals, but we're going to bring in some folks who have a unique perspective on what they do and are willing to share with people. So hopefully you'll stay tuned. Thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Yes.
At Hub City, all the ones that I have ever attended, those are all people who have been published by a traditional publisher, except for her. No one else here has been. You have not. You have not.
No.
Definitely.
Are you going to? Is this going to be geared toward traditional publishing to show you what it's like and show you the hard track that you have to go through? Or is this going to be geared to publishing however you can, because there are now at least 3 platforms that you can publish on?
Most of the training, the short answer is no. We're going to try to focus it on